Invaders or his other library manipulation to find Humility. Humility all but shuts down Nick Robinson's deck.
All right, so here we are. For everyone watching, welcome to round 3 of the Star City Games Open Series here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Gavin Verhey. I'm joined here with Adrian Sullivan.
Hello.
And we're bringing you live coverage of this event. This is a pretty cool match between two players, one of which is a pretty staple Legacy name. On your right, David Gearhart. David has played a ton of Legacy, a name in the community. I believe he invented the original Solidarity Reset deck from a couple years ago. And I played that deck, it's a ton of fun, and it's cool to see now that High Tide is better, but he's not playing that at all. He's playing a deck he calls Shot in the Dark. It's kind of like an Enlightened Tutor-based deck. You go Enlightened Tutor, Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek, a bunch of one-of bullets, but it also has Tezzeret in it, which can both animate his bullets and kill quickly.
Right.
With Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek, Tezzeret, that's like killing them really super fast.
Yeah. His opponent, Nick Robinson, besides looking like a young Brian Hacker, is playing a nearly mono brown deck. He's got Goblin Welders here. It's the Golgotha Forge Master deck that we saw just a few weeks back in the one of the very first Star City Games live broadcasts. Yep. I think this might have been at Indianapolis where it made the top 8 there. And there was all kinds of talk about people being like, oh my god, he laid a Golgotha Forge Master and then got a Blightsteel Colossus and killed me. Well, there's no Blightsteel Colossus in here, but there is the Wormcoil engines that we saw before, where there was just like the ability to make this never-ending stream of Wormcoils. They draw their hands.
And let's see. Flipping through them, let's see what we have. All right, players are off to the races. So, Ancient Tomb for Nick Robinson.
Taps.
And
Grim Monolith. That is the scariest I think he could do with that one Ancient Tomb. Is that 3 Metalworker for follow-up? Voltaic Keyword's just fine. Oh,
untap my Monolith, go to 4. This is nice turn 1.
Okay. Well, next turn, he has access to 7 mana without even laying another land. This turn, he's still going. Is that Sensei's Divining Top?
That is a top. Just the next turn. What next turn? All right, so David Gearhart, here comes Seat of the Synod, top.
There we go, tops on both sides.
Only half the permanents Nick was able to lay on the first turn. And this turn, too, is going to be pretty ridiculous from Nick Robinson. Looks like he just plucked Metalworker. The name Nick Robinson sounds familiar. If anybody out there knows him and knows of some of his results, please let us know. We tried searching it in the deck database and it didn't come up, so... okay, there's that Metalworker.
There's not many cards left in Nick Robinson's hands. That Metalworker doesn't represent as much of a scary threat that it might have, but that doesn't mean it can't still help power out just a ton of mana.
Emmett Gore asks a good question on Twitter. What's the interaction between Humility and Tezzeret's second ability? I believe it's a timestamp effect, so whichever one happens second will occur, but the layers got changed sometime in the last year or two, so I'm not sure if that's still how Humility works. Let's see if we'll try and get an answer to your question. If anyone out there on Twitter knows who's a judge, a higher level judge, let us know.
So we got a Lightning Greaves now on, and remember that Voltaic key is probably going to be tapped since you used it. There we go. He Lightning Greaves on his Metalworker, which keeps that guy safe from any harm as well as giving it haste.
Man, now it means you can't use the Voltaic key on the Metalworker, which is one thing that Lightning Greaves on it prevents, but other than that, I mean, it's going to protect that Metalworker, give it haste, and soon enough he'll be able to ship the Greaves over to something else.
There you go, says David. You use that Voltaic key. It's got to be tapped. It's got to be tapped. Wait, I'm untapping it. I'm untapping it.
Now, I would really like to make some more mana. Can I please make some more mana? That wasn't enough mana for me the first time.
He's like, you tapped it. You tapped it. There you go. Yes, that's right. Oh, wait,
no,
I'm untapping
it again.
Untapping it. Wait a second. No. You tapped it over there. Okay.
What kind of shenanigans are occurring?
I'm guessing what's happening is that the discussion is being that he activated the Voltaic key. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to get it. Golgotha Forge Master. And there we get it over there. That equals a Tinker effect.
Oh, this is going to be brutal.
Oh, boy.
A nice turn 2 for Nick Robinson. I don't know what you do about this if you're David Gearhart. Charlotte Sable on Twitter tells us that the latest timestamp does win. I was right, that they both apply in layer 7B, so it's pure timestamp. So if you have Tezzeret and Humility And if you Tezzeret before Humility, it'll be a 1-1. If you Tezzeret after Humility, it will be a 5-5.
Thank you very much for that. Unconfirmed by our judges on staff, but it sounds right to me.
Yeah,
Thank you, Charlotte.
Also sounds right to me. Well, if anybody out there on Twitter feels otherwise, please let us know. But
Mirror Battlesphere up in here.
Yep.
Over to the Mirror Battlesphere now.
Yeah,
come on
turn
in.
2, attack with Mirror Battlesphere. That's all. Take 8, go.
He says go.
This is
Let's see. There seems to be some disagreement about what's going on, but
about
I
whether
think they'll
he
resolve it pretty
tap the
quickly.
tokens or not. Let's see. All right. Oh, okay. We got some Rashad tokens to help make it clear what's going on. Rashad always there to lend a hand.
Look at that. All those Rashads. Now,
Still
if you
had all
come to
these.
these events, you can get Rashad tokens for your very own, which I highly recommend. I've got one of every kind and 2 of several others.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be collector's items one day.
Okay.
So, Dave Gearhart off to a quick loss. Yeah, turn 2.
Look at that smile.
Look at that smile from Nick Robinson. Turn 2, attack with Mirror Battlesphere. Okay, yeah, that's fair. Is this real life? No, it is not real life. This is Legacy. Legacy is not real life. We're in some weird paranormal universe where Mirror Battlesphere attacks on turn 2. And so now the players go to their sideboards. What do we think is going to go on here, Adrian?
Well, there's a lot of options here for David. Some of them are very slow, though. I mean, he's got Seal of Cleansing, so basically an Enlightened Tutorable Disenchant that he has that he can get things going. He's got another Humility, which is definitely of value. And I kind of wonder maybe if he's going to bring in Firespout. Now, Firespout is a turn 3 cast, but remember, David Gearhart has access to Force of Will to be able to delay this kind of explosive start, potentially. And a Firespout, besides being useful against Metalworker and Goblin Welder as a means to kill it, means that you don't necessarily have a welder hitting the table and just owning you. Like having the ability just to get some stuff off the table is huge. And remember also, this is a Thopter Foundry deck. So he hasn't, remember also his opponent is playing a deck with, if he remembers the list, Lodestone Golem, which as a 5/3 is also killed by Firespout. So just loading up on those cards that can take care of the various different creatures that come from Nick Robinson, I think is going to be the way he's going to go. On the other hand, Nick Robinson, he didn't see very much of his opponent's deck. What he saw was a Sensei's Divining Top, and he saw an artifact land. I believe he saw a Seat of the Synod. So it's possible that he might view his opponent as being any number of decks. It could be a counterbalance deck. It could be, there's lots of different possibilities. And so he's probably going to treat this deck as a Force of Will deck.
Yeah, I'd imagine you could think it's like counterbalance. Maybe he thinks David is a real cool dude playing Affinity with Sensei's Divining Top.
Well, I don't think he's thinking that. But I think he might be thinking also decks like Painted Servant.
Yeah.
Painted Servant.
I wasn't serious about the Affinity bit, by the way.
One of the things when we do these little jokes to ourselves, I don't think that everyone necessarily realizes we're joking sometimes there. Phyrexian Revoker might be a great card just in general, because if he brings in Phyrexian Revoker, it can make a counterbalance deck not nearly as effective by turning off that Sensei's Divining Top. And if he brings in a Phyrexian Revoker against, let's say, a Painter Servant deck, being able to turn off Grindstone or turn off an opponent's Goblin Welder is also of value. Now, obviously, turning off Welder hurts your own Welder, but you might need to do it anyway just because, or just turning off the Grindstone itself can do a lot of work.
Yeah, so interesting to see how these players board. I really want to see how these decks interact. Game 1 we saw basically nothing. If you just joined us, basically what happened is Nick attacked with Mirror Battlesphere on turn 2, and that was the end of that. So we'll see what these 2 cool decks do. David Gearhart's deck looks really interesting, featuring Tezzeret, Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek, kind of a top engine, but no counterbalance. I really want to see how this works out. Who do you think has an advantage here in general?
I like Nick's deck for this. The explosive mana David can't respond to incredibly quickly, and his responses on the early side of the game are 1-for-1s. Nick is prepared for 1-for-1s. Not only does Goblin Welder help recover from the destruction of any particular artifact that he might have, but it might just come to the table a little bit too late. If the game draws on, a Humility is going to be really devastating, but it's easily possible that Nick can just tear things up before it even gets there.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. David's on the play this time, so he has a little more time to set up what he's doing. But if Nick gets another draw like that one, there's no telling what's going to happen.
Now, one thing to note that's really exciting in Nick Robinson's sideboard, if he expects a Force of Will to come, he has Summoning Trap in his sideboard. So if he goes Goblin Welder and it gets Force of Will, Summoning Trap can come out and really show David Gearhart what's up.
That's a really neat little card to have there, yeah. Turn 1 Goblin Welder, Force of Will, okay, Lodestone Golem, go. Wow. Alright, here comes top from David Gearhart. Let's see, Dave Lonchiano on Twitter wants to know what David Gearhart's counter package looks like, and I think it's just 4 forces. Yeah, just 4 Force of Wills. So I don't think he'll bring in those Summoning Traps, although he does have counterbalance in the sideboard, so if we see a Game 3, we could see that happen. Nick Wastelands away David's land. Darksteel Citadel from Nick Robinson, and there's a Voltaic Key. Can't Wasteland that one. Not that David would, but... And David cracks a land, and we're going to look at his top 3 cards, I'd imagine, with that Sensei's Divining Top.
Now, one of the things that's actually really intriguing about this deck is that he has no main deck counterbalances, but he sideboards 4 counterbalances.
Right. I think he's probably boarding them in, A, for the matchups where he feels that he wants them, and B, because he can kind of catch his opponents off guard. If they play a long game 1 and don't see counterbalance, they might just assume he doesn't have counterbalance in his deck. Now, I might consider playing 1 main deck counterbalance so that you can enlighten tutor for it.
I agree with that.
But David is a man who knows this format, so I'd imagine that possibility has crossed his mind before. If we get the chance to talk to him about his cool deck, perhaps he'll be able to tell us a little bit about why that happened.
Turn 2 from Nick. We still have Voltaic Key with no real action on it. Darksteel Citadel and City of Traders. City of Traders, I see a Grim Monolith in Nick Robinson's hand.
Oh,
so he has real possibilities of getting some explosive mana. There it is, Grim Monolith. Immediately threatening the possibility of 6 mana if that resolves, which I'm guessing it probably will.
Yeah, I mean, David only has 4 forces for his hard counters. I don't see one sitting in his hand. I see Jace, Tezzeret, Brainstorm. There's Lightning Greaves. And I see Mere Battlesphere sitting in Nick Robinson's hand. Let's see.
Brainstorm. There is an Engineered Explosives there. Engineered Explosives for 2 can go and destroy Nick's Lightning Greaves and Grim Monolith.
Yep, and let's see, going to be able to top into 3 new cards here. Going to take a peek. Let's see what there is. Jace, Thopter Foundry. Is that Seal of Cleansing?
He does have Seal Cleansings available from his board, so I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm pretty sure that's Seal of Cleansing. That is definitely a good card for this matchup. Or is that Humility? I think it might be Humility.
There we go. Explosives for 2.
2.
Can't activate it yet.
Watch David Gearhart's hands. It's really quick, really unique.
This is the important turn here for Nick Robinson. Can he do something before that Explosives really tears up his development?
Yeah, I mean, that Explosives is going to really hinder Nick knocking off Grim Monolith and Lightning Greaves, and it also prevents Nick from putting more things out onto the battlefield, cutting him off.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Is it time for Mere Battlesphere?
6, 7.
Yeah, Mere Battlesphere. And
looks good in quote marks.
Yeah. Now David's going to take a ton of damage this turn, but he does have Ensnaring Bridge for the next turn, which will do good work. It leaves the cards there. And
here's the bridge.
Yeah, there's the bridge indeed.
Hand of 3.
Looks like Seal of Cleansing, Humility, Tezzeret are his last 3 cards. So he'll get hit by those 4 Rashad tokens, dropping his life down to 2, and then David has to find something to do on his next turn, unless Nick can play another guy and ship it to Greaves. Oh man, Looks like there's is that a Goblin Welder? I'm pretty sure it is in Nick Robinson's hand.
Yeah, and he's got the ability then to activate it immediately once he's ready with it. 1, 2, loses it because of the laying of a new land. Sensei's Divining Top.
Sure. Lets him draw a card. Or, sorry, look at his top 3 cards, and then draw one if he wants. And let's see what he's going for here. He's just going to crack the top. So he tries to draw a card with the top. So there's a trick with Voltaic Key, and since it's Divining Top. Wow, that's really cool. So if you have the top in the key, you can tap it to draw a card. In response, activate the key to untap the top, and tap it again to draw a card. The way top works is not contingent on being in play to draw the card. So you draw your top card, and then draw top again.
Absolutely.
So you basically just get a free card, and top goes back into your hand.
And in a similar way, Goblin Welder can make the same kind of trick happen.
Sure. Yeah, where you sacrifice the top. It's not in play. It can't come on top of your library. All right, so David draws, and he's got 4 mirrors to deal with. Okay, that Chrome Mox is actually pretty good, helping to remove cards from his hand. So he imprints Humility, which is not a card he wants out right now, thanks to that Ensnaring Bridge. Now he's got to find a way to dump both of his cards here. I think you play Tezzeret and go plus to try and find a Chrome Mox or something.
Well, the Tezzeret ability, right?
Yeah.
Like, if he can find something, Chrome Mox would be wonderful, right?
Yeah, if you find a Chrome Mox, I don't think he has it. I saw Sensei's Top in there.
Well, he could lay the Sensei's Top, immediately just tap it to draw a card.
Yeah.
And then if he draws a Chrome Mox, still be alive.
I mean, I don't think you want to take the extra card. I think he's just going to crack the top he has, see what he finds.
Oh, yeah, there's the one in play.
It's Vault of Whispers, and there it is, Seal of Cleansing.
There we go.
They found what he was looking for. So now David Gearhart out of cards. That Ensnaring Bridge is active.
Does he have a Goblin Welder in hand?
I believe he's got a Goblin Welder. Let's see what answers he has to that Ensnaring Bridge.
If it's a Goblin Welder, if there's an artifact in the graveyard on David Gearhart's side, he can just get rid of the Ensnaring Bridge that way. Is there one in the David Gearhart's yard?
No.
No? No, that's too bad.
So it's important to keep in mind, Goblin Welder can target both players.
Right.
Because the card wasn't good enough on its own, switching out your own artifacts.
Yeah, I mean, I used that card in Pro Tour a million trillion years ago, mostly to disrupt my opponents who had Tinkers. Be like, oh, I see you tinkered that. Let's put it back.
Yeah, exactly. F6. F6. Dave makes it very clear he has no responses. Play through your turn. I don't want to take a draw here. Even though there's still have a half an hour left in the round, but...
That was fabulous.
So, the only answer Nick has in his deck, besides finding a way to get David to put an artifact in his graveyard...
Revoker.
There's a Revoker. Name's
Tezzeret.
Which is fine. I mean, the only answer he could have is Spine of Issa. He has 1 Spine of Issa in his sideboard. If he didn't bring it in, then he's not going to be able to do anything about that Ensnaring Bridge unless David puts an artifact into his graveyard. Now, maybe David doesn't know this, and if Nick can just trick him into using that, he can switch them out. But I would guess, that David knows that based on his experience in the format.
Yeah.
And now there's a Thopter Foundry there. Now, Thopter Foundry is kind of dangerous because it's an artifact. You're not going to do a lot of sacrificing because of that Ensnaring Bridge, but you can. It just empties David's hand, which is what he's looking for, and now he can just sit behind Tezzeret and eventually drain Nick for 18 life.
Draw, draw.
Currently, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 artifacts on David Gearhart's side. So if he can find 2 more artifacts, that'll be lethal with Tezzeret's ultimate. And that brings him down to 14, or 16 rather. So now David just needs 1 more artifact to be lethal. Let's see if David finds it. Seems pretty likely with that.
It's a Seal of Cleansing. I think he found it.
There's Mox Opal. He counts to double check. And Tezzeret Ultimate should clean this game up. Nick Robinson surveys the board, making sure he's not missing anything. Alright, activates Tezzeret. Drain.
What? What? What does
wait,
that do?
Wait, what?
That card is not good enough for Legacy.
Double all my artifacts?
Wait a second.
Yeah,
Ouch.
when we saw Blake McCracken win with Affinity 2 weeks ago, happened all the time. Every opponent had to re-Tezzeret it. Wait, so you mean your artifact lands count? And I lose 2 for all of them? Yes, that's exactly what happens.
Right. Okay, and we're on to game 3.
Yeah, and Nick packs up his cards.
Now, one of the things that's kind of exciting about this matchup, Nick Robinson is playing a deck that's very, very explosive. It's not exactly a combo deck, but for all practical purposes, it does such an impressive, powerful, like, artifact push-out with its mana that it feels combo-rific in a big way. And David Gearhart's deck isn't exactly a combo deck either. It's more slow and ponderous and just basically tries to stop the opponent from doing something and then can get out some sort of combination of cards that are very powerful. But even though these decks both kind of have a combo-ish element to them, when they're in conversation with each other, especially after sideboarding, there's a real level of interaction that's going on between these two decks.
Yeah, a lot that's going on here, actually. The players are trying to figure out what's the best way to go, and you can see them going back to their sideboards to switch it up for the third game. I'm sure Nick Robinson is going to bring in that Spine of Issa so he can deal with David Gearhart's ensnaring bridges. And now that he's got a better look at David's deck. But, yeah, these decks are really cool. I think Nick, on the play, it might be a little rough for David, but we'll see if he... I don't know if he's going to have turn 2 Mirror Battlesphere again. That might be a one-time per tournament kind of deal. But, yeah, well, we'll see what happens. I think that Spine of Issa is definitely coming in. I'm not sure what changes David Gearhart is going to make. Seems like he definitely wants Seal of Cleansing and Snaring Bridge.
Now, I just gotta pause you for half a second to go back to Nick Robinson. One of the things that's really exciting is that Spine of Ishsa is a card that someone is playing. Well, there was a 1 second.
She's fucking Brandon.
Keep going.
Okay, the Spine of Ishsa is a card that we. It's hard to imagine seeing this in Legacy. You know, it's a 7 mana artifact. Feels very expensive to Desert Twist, but just because of the nature of how Nick Robinson's deck works, this is a card that he's legitimately seeing used because he thinks it plays a role, and I think he's probably correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's a newer card we haven't really seen a lot of yet, but it does exactly what this deck wants to do. Every time it comes into play, it destroys something. So with a card like Goblin Welder, with the ability to Forge Master it up, you can just reuse it over and over, kill some permanents, and just annihilate cards such as Ensnaring Bridge that are cutting David Gearhart off from winning. So Spine of Issa could be a key card here. And we'll see what kind of draw Nick gets. The thing about these kind of decks I found is they're typically kind of inconsistent. I played with the second place deck that was very similar to the one Nick Robinson is playing from a couple Legacy Opens ago. And I found there were draws that did insane things. Turn 2, Mirror Battlesphere, kind of insane things. But later on in the game, it can easily temper out if your early draw gets beaten, or it can also just get inconsistent draws. You have explosive draws, but you also have draws that don't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, one of the parts with Explosion is that you have to put that explosion into something, right? If you've got all of the mana and nothing to go with it, well then that's not very exciting. And if you've got all of the end results and none of the explosion, then you're also going to be looking a little bit, silly with your as you wait around and your opponent just pushes all over you. Mulliganing obviously is the way to avoid that, but you can't mulligan into Oblivion, even though you've got cards like Goblin Welder, which really help on mulligans.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, what a powerful card, Goblin Welder. Yeah, I mean, for 1 red you get a 1/1 that allows you to switch out artifacts in your graveyard within play or your opponent's graveyard within play, which is pretty insane. I didn't even think about how it could switch out David Gearhart's Ensnaring Bridge, but that's definitely a good answer. That's certainly something that David Gearhart's going to have to play around and be careful with. He can't afford to accidentally lose his Ensnaring Bridge.
Turn 1 City of Traders into Grim Monolith. This is a turn 1, I believe, Grim Monolith. No, it wasn't a turn 1 Grim Monolith in game 2, but it's an early Grim Monolith in most of the games. Follows up with Metalworker.
Yeah, it's really fair. First turn City of Traders, Grim Monolith, Metalworker, go. Pretty ridiculous start by Grim Robinson, or Nick Robinson yet again.
And $10 draft number 4. Please make your way to the side events area. $10 draft number 4.
And David, looking at his hand, surveying it, wanting to find some sort of answer, hunched over a little bit, his body language kind of signaling, I wish I had something to do that would just solve this problem. There it is. Swords to Plowshares.
That's a good one to have. Yeah, you pretty much needed an answer right then, or it was going to be rough.
Now notice he swords is here rather than go the other direction with the Seal of Cleansing, because he does not want that card even to be available to be Goblin Weldered.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate for David that he had to remove that Seal of Cleansing, but what you have to do, you have to do. And that's certainly something that you have to do.
Yeah, Ancient Tune comes into play and destroys the City of Traders.
And he floats the mana from the city and uses the mana from the Ancient Tomb to untap the Grim Monolith, giving him access to potentially 7 mana next turn.
Main phase Brainstorm, one of the classic plays of Legacy and of Vintage.
Yes, certainly. So let's see what he does here.
And again, a lot of the times, the reason that you do the main phase Brainstorm in this format essentially has to do with your cards can be so powerful, you might want to just cast it during your main phase.
Right, I mean, the other thing is that if you cast it during your main phase, it digs you 1 card deeper, and you get them during your main phase so you can do them. So if you're going to cast the end step, usually it's better to just untap and cast it on your turn, because you see another card that way. And for 1 mana, it's such a low investment. There's Koldotha Forgemaster from Nick Robinson. And David's going to need another answer. Yep, he has the swords, which will get rid of that Forgemaster.
There we are.
And Forgemaster goes away. And, okay, 4th land for David Gearhart. Jace time? Yep, it's Jace time. So,
ouch.
Despite an insane start by Nick Robinson, David Gearhart has managed to fight back a little bit using double Swords to Plowshares, and now he's got an active Jace.
Yeah, it was very important for him to have that Chrome Mox to be able to give him access to that white mana.
Yeah, and now that he's got that white mana available, he was able to Swords early and then stabilize the board, and now Nick can't do anything. He's just forced to pass the turn, and David has Enlightened Tutor.
Enlightened Tutor is going to be lights.
And there's Thopter Foundry.
I mean, it's still possible for Nick Robinson to push back into this game.
Yeah, I mean, he still needs Sword of the Meek to set up his combo.
Jace the Mind Sculptor in Legacy, once that is in play, can be so overwhelming, even more so than other formats.
Judge to the stage, please. Judge.
And David Gearhart assembles both pieces. We've got the sword, we've got the foundry.
Oh, man. All right, passes back. So he's got the combo now, cracks it, and it's going to be rough for Nick Robinson to come back from this start. Let's see, what can we do if you're Nick Robinson here?
I mean, basically what he needs to have happen is a succession of answers, or just, gosh, like, he could theoretically overwhelm his opponent by crafting tons of Wormcoil engines with Goblin Welder Wormcoil.
Sure.
But he would have to do something along that lines of making enough Wormcoil engines to overcome David Gearhart's combo, which is making X artifact creatures a turn, where X is the amount of mana he piles into it.
I mean, I think Goblin Welder would be a good out, but it might be too little too late. There's a Mere Battlesphere, which is almost certainly too little too late. David Gearhart taps that Mox Opal to get another token. And let's see what we got. There's 2, 3, 4. All right, there's Tezzeret. Yeah, and if there wasn't enough problems for Nick Robinson, that Tezzeret's going to be even worse. Granted, he could attack with the Mere Battlesphere and deal damage to David Gearhart by tapping all the Mere tokens and redirect it to Tezzeret. So unless David finds a way to shut off that Battlesphere, Tezzeret's probably going down. And yeah, I think he just found Seat of the Synod. Yep, there's Seat of the Synod. Let's see what David chooses to do.
All of those blockers from that Thopter Foundry.
So David bounces the Mere Battlesphere with Jace and passes the turn. Now, a lot of Rashad love happening in the battlefield right now. Now Nick can recast the Battlesphere, but it's kind of a losing battle with that Jace sitting over there. You're going to get a bunch of tokens, but not nearly as strong as the tokens that Nick Robinson is getting, or David Gearhart's getting.
Yeah. You know, as I think about it, I can see if he were to draw numerous Phyrexian Revokers in a row, the first one to turn off Jace, the second one to turn off the Thopter Foundry, and then the third one to deal with Tezzeret, he would probably be fine.
Sure. So triple Thopter Foundry, or sorry, triple
Phyrexian Revoker.
Phyrexian Revoker would be enough.
Boom!
All right, yeah,
and
that's
we're done.
it. Wow. After an insane draw by Nick Robinson and some really close games, David Gearhart takes it. I want to see if we can get David in the booth to talk to us about his deck.
Absolutely.
See if okay, and we got him on the way. Awesome. What a cool